Well, good evening. Can you hear me? All right. It's good to see everybody.
Hello,
Miss St. Clair, thanks for joining us this evening.
it's my pleasure. Thank you, Dr. Weeks.
Miss Bueno, Miss Trujillo, good to see you. Dr. Vink, good to see you. Hey, Nadine.
Hello, Dr. Weeks. Good evening. Like we have a quorum. So I will call this meeting to order at 6:15 p.m. And Dr. Weeks, could you start us off with the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
My pleasure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Weeks. And can we please have roll call?
Yes, good evening. Alora Diaz,
Present.
Carmen Trujillo,
I'm here.
Jessica Bueno,
Here.
Regional Carrillo,
Here.
and Alicia Vink.
Present.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Carmen Trujillo, so moved.
And can I have a second?
Carillo, I second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. That the motion passes, and we'll move on to awards, recognitions, and announcements.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the governing board. This is always my favorite part of the meeting as we celebrate what we can with the time we have. Our high-level celebrations, and of course, it's always great to recognize folks. So we'll try, I think we have a PowerPoint for this. Thank you, sir. So we'll start with Faith North Preschool. And so during State Superintendent Kathy Hospman's State of the Special Education speech, Faith North's self-contained teacher, Lakeisha Smith, Miss Smith, was publicly recognized for her outstanding work with her special needs students. Superintendent Hoffman said, "Our exceptional student services team regularly hears from parents who share their success stories with early childhood education and intervention." In Lakeisha Smith's classroom at Faith North in the Phoenix Elementary School District, students with disabilities are continually engaged in activities that boost their social emotional skills, helping them respond to situations appropriately. These engaging lessons help students acquire essential early language, literacy, and communication skills. One family shared that Ms. Smith's dedication to supporting vital skill development has ensured that their student continues to grow despite the challenges of learning amid a pandemic. A huge shout out goes to Ms. Smith and Faith North Preschool. What an honor to be spotlighted in the superintendent's annual address. Congratulations. And thank you, Ms. Smith. You do great work. Hey, how about that? Phoenix is now Healthy, Verify, Certified for our protocols and best practices to safely reopen schools during a pandemic. The district partnered with the Scottsdale-based company Healthy Verify, who works with infectious disease experts from Barrow Neurological Institute and researchers at Arizona State University to provide schools and organizations with protocols, procedures to help mitigate the spread of COVID and other viruses. The certification process helps to ensure our parents and community members that our schools are safe and prepared to help stop the spread of viruses when we return to in-person instruction. In addition, Healthy Verify published an article announcing our certification, and you can view that article in the news section of our website. And just to add on, Dr. Moran of Healthy Verify recently held a kind of a forum, a Q&A, informational digital address, but then it was well attended and very informative. Did any board members get to take a look at that?
Yes, Dr. Weeks, I did.
And what did you think, Dr. Vink?
I found it informative and was grateful that our staff had the opportunity to ask questions and have those experts there to provide some answers.
Very good, very good. Thank you very much for sharing that. All right. So moving right along, the district is hosting a kindergarten registration drive-through event on Wednesday, February 24th at 5:30 p.m. at each of our schools. Or parents can call an enroll specialist to enroll their kindergartner for the 21-22 school year. A postcard is being mailed to every resident and business within our district's boundaries and should begin reaching homes on February 15th. Don't wait. Enroll your child today. So we'll ask everybody who's watching and listening to help us spread the word. Next, parents. The district is launching a new communication platform called Peach Jar to communicate school information and post flyers from community-based organizations. Parents can reach the Peach Jar site on the district or school websites. And for those parents who have email addresses on file with us, you will receive email updates each time a flyer is posted to Peach Jar. If you're not currently receiving emails from the district or your school, please contact your school office and provide your email address so you too can receive important information from the district and your neighborhood schools. Look for more information on Peach Jar in the next few weeks. Now, this is something that we've talked about, and it comes to us by way of no cost to the district. And we want to thank Linda Jeffries for introducing Peach Jar to the district. And we're excited. We're excited to be able to pass that community information on to our parents. And the last thing that's not listed here that I would like to celebrate is the contracts rollout. Governing board members, you approved contracts, and true to course and on schedule, contracts rolled out to some of our support our certificated staff today. And so the rest of the contracts will roll out in due time, but I just wanted to keep the board up to date with regards to the contracts rollout. It's when you take a look at the mechanics, it takes quite a bit of us. It really does take a village to roll contracts. So I'm very grateful to the board and to our staff for putting this together and getting this out to our folks. So thank you very much.
Dr.
And
Weeks,
Madam Chair, yes,
I'm sorry. Are we allowed to ask questions during this part?
sure.
I just had a question about the pre-K, the kindergarten enrollment. Will that be posted on social media so we can all share out?
I think it already has, but I'll double check with it. I'll double check to make sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right, got that noted here. Any other questions? Okay, Madam Chair, that concludes our brief celebrations for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Weeks. And I really like having it as a presentation. It's easy to follow along. So thank you for that. So we'll go ahead and move on to item B.
Oh yes, here I go again. Troy, would you bring up the numbers?
Yeah, where would you like to start today?
Oh, just pick one, Troy. That's we'll start with the district numbers, because they all tell about the same story. So this particular table is the one that we put on the website, and it has the zip codes that we focus in on, and you can see kind of that we're beginning to trend downward. So for example, our COVID-like illness, which is not really an indicator we pay a lot of attention to, is now in the yellow. And then the different zip codes for cases per 100,000 and percent positivity, as we move on to some of the other spreadsheets, you'll see that over time we're moving in the right direction, which is consistent with what we see in the news. So Troy, we'll go ahead and do the, let's do percent positivity. And so here, I'll just pick a couple of zip codes, but you can see where we kind of, where we were in December. We went up, and now we're either leveling off or coming down. February 4th was at 25.8, and February 11th, which reflects the weeks of the 24th through the 30th, is down to 18.6. So you could see that's kind of a general trend in most areas. Some areas are either kind of leveling off, and we have one zip code there, 85041. I noticed that that went up a couple of points, as well as 85017. But in general, we're seeing within a point of leveling off, and in some cases declining. So Troy, let's go ahead and pull up our cases per 100,000. If you would, please. And so, you know, the numbers are still high. There's no doubt about it, but trending in the right direction. So I think that's an important variable, and I'm hopeful that this trend continues. There's a lot of talk around a return to in-person instruction, and pretty soon our governing board and us, the community, we'll need to have some conversations about a return to in-person instruction. We know that we're already doing a zealot testing in person, and then the Ames testing that will be coming up requires us to be in person. And so school sites are making plans for that, effective plans, I might add. So I'm very confident and very pleased with what I've been seeing with our school sites and our administrators collaborating to provide this kind of wraparound safety services for students. I was at a Kenilworth leadership team meeting this afternoon, and we talked about kindergartners who have never been in school coming onto the campus for the very first time. And what inspired me about that conversation is they were talking about kind of the visuals, or the warmth, or the friendliness, the level of effort they're going to put into the campus, so that we don't scare the kindergartners. You know, they're there for a specific purpose. You know, they're coming out of the home, they're coming into a new environment. They've never had the opportunity to step onto a school campus, and their first experience is this. So our schools are very sensitive to that, and I'm very happy and very pleased that we take the extra effort, go the extra mile to pay attention to the whole child. So anyway, I do think that it's appropriate for us to begin scheduling conversations about what the next few months just might look like. As you're aware, how many of you are aware that some of our other neighboring districts have already set dates for a return to in-person instruction, right? And we haven't done that yet. And quite honestly, I would like for us to talk about it a little bit more before we do. So
Dr. Weeks,
are there, yes.
I don't remember if the new board has seen it, but I think what could be helpful in preparing for those discussions is just making sure that the new board members have an understanding of what the financial, or sorry, the operational and academic models are for going back, since we've already finalized those and those have been vetted. And then I've been following along with the news, and I've been seeing, different articles from the CDC and other sources that are recommending a return to school. So I don't know if perhaps Ms. Jeffries has been following along, if we have a list of those articles just to help inform the discussion as well. And then finally, since we have been operating in our labs or learning labs, I know we can't give out specific data, but if we have a sense of just how well those have been going, just as somewhat of an indicator as what to expect when we bring our students back, I think those could be helpful in informing the discussion.
Yes, President Diaz, I think you're absolutely right. I'm not going to rely on my memory here for the learning labs, but if I did, it would sound like I believe we had one outbreak, and that's all I can remember. But I'll double check that.
Okay.
And then I do recall, Dr. Vink, I think you mentioned something about a video or some pictures that would kind of show what a typical classroom would look like. Is that still on your mind?
Yes, Dr. Weeks. More I had seen in other districts, and this may have even been out of state, a video for families that kind of walked them very quickly through what the day might look like, even from getting on the bus to getting into their classrooms and then leaving their classrooms in this kind of COVID environment.
Kind of like a day in the life?
Yes. Yeah, just so that especially our youngest learners had some sort of visual prior to coming back to campus.
I think that's a pretty good idea, Dr. Vink. So, and we do have the resources to be able to do that. So I'll ask Ms. Jeffries and Ms. Reynoso, see if we can't put something together for that.
Thank you.
We do have all the stuff. So, all right. Do I have any other questions or concerns or comments from the board on this? Okay, Madam Chair, that concludes my COVID-19 data dashboard update for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Weeks.
And thank you, Troy.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to community communications. And Dr. Weeks, how many do we have in total now?
I believe we have 2.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and set the time limit at 3 minutes each, please.
Okay, shall I begin?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Our first comment comes from Chico Robinson, and he is writing about the district decisions about school schedules. Hello, members of the school board. My name is Chico Robinson. I am Vice President of PECTA, a 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher, and a community member in the Phoenix Elementary School District. To begin with, I want to thank the board members and district for prioritizing the health and safety of its students and educators and adhering to science and the Department of Health's metrics for safety. Teaching online effectively has proved to be the most challenging method of instruction for me and many other educators. The amount of hours required to adapt a curriculum that was not designed for online learning surpasses far beyond our paid work hours. Both students and parents are in need of more communication and reassurance during these trying times. I have put in that extra time and energy believing that my district, who calls itself family, would be honest and listen to its educators when changes are proposed. I am a family member of Phoenix L who is currently not upset but disappointed at the misrepresentation of the schedule change as presented to both staff members and the school board. The presentation failed to include the data PECTA gathered regarding the impact on educators. The presenters implied that the board was choosing between asynchronous and synchronous instruction on Monday. The board made it very clear in their discussions that they did not support adding additional synchronous instruction. The teachers said no, the board said no, the district said we know better than all of you. It was not the educators' responsibility to increase attendance. That falls on the shoulders of the decision makers at district. Yet the teachers are the ones who now have to carry this burden, as do our students, through even more screen time. The teachers who advocated to use asynchronous time on Monday to adapt lessons to make them engaging for online education, to maintain communication with parents, and to identify students that need additional assistance, now find themselves without the hours in their week to create an effective curriculum to reach all their students. With teacher burnout nationally at unparalleled levels, teachers can no longer sacrifice additional time from their own lives and families. You can't add more work on educators to fix district level issues. And our next comment comes from Jay Barbuto, and this is regarding PECTA community and school support. Good evening, President Dr. Diaz, board members Ms. Bueno, Mr. Carrillo, Dr. Vink, and Ms. Trujillo, as well as Dr. Weeks, Cabinet, and Phoenix #1 community. My name is Jay Barbuto, and I am proud to serve as the co-president of the Phoenix Elementary Classroom Teachers Association. Two pillars of our union are community solidarity and social justice. Considering these pillars, PECTA has taken action to assist the Phoenix #1 family. Two restaurants, the Barrio Cafe and the Coronado, have been staples of our district community for years now. Many of us have met at these restaurants after work, before board meetings, on the weekends, all because they are etched in the framework of our community. Both the Coronado and Barrio Cafe have been struggling due to financial instability of the COVID-19 pandemic. PECTA in turn decided to purchase $500 worth of gift cards from both restaurants that we raffled off to members to help both establishments stay afloat. We urge all members of the community to join us in purchasing either meals or gift cards from both restaurants to help them in this time of crisis. Also, in honor of the National Education Association's Read Across America Month, as well as adhering to our principles of advocating for social justice, PECTA has purchased $1,400 worth of books that we will be donating to our district. 20 brand new culturally representative and diverse books will be given to the library/media center at each site. Please reach out if you'd like to see the books that we purchased. Our union will always advocate for the best working conditions for our staff. However, we can't have great schools unless our communities and students are thriving as well. Please remain safe, get vaccinated, and mask up, Phoenix L. And that concludes tonight's comments.
Thank you, Ms. Sinclair. We will go, and as a reminder to our community, we cannot comment during this time, but thank you so much for taking the time to write your comments. And this is something that we can follow up with at a later time. And we'll move on to item D. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This is Alicia Bink, so moved.
And do I have a second?
Reggie Carrillo, I second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Okay, with that, the motion passes, and we'll move to item E.
Thank you, Madam President, governing board members, cabinet, and community members listening. It is a privilege to bring to you our federal programs team to share with you the work that they do. I'm going to give a really brief history lesson here, very brief. I don't know how many people know that President Lyndon B. Johnson, prior to him getting into politics, was a teacher. And he taught in a very small town on the border of Texas and Mexico. And he witnessed inequities due to his children living in poverty. And so when he became president, he made it very clear that was going to be a priority for him to make legislation to ensure those inequities were eliminated. And so he signed in the 1960s, 1964, I believe, he signed the Elementary and Secondary Education Act outside of the one-room schoolhouse that he attended with his teacher by his side. Pretty cool. And when he did that, he said, "I believe deeply no law that I have signed or will ever sign means more to the future of America." Our federal program team oversees these federal grants. It's no longer called the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. You might have known it under No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top, depending on the presidential administration, they changed the name. It's currently called the Every Student Succeed Acts. So the purpose of that is to level the playing field. So our students that live in poverty have this access to the same opportunities that those that live in higher socioeconomic areas do. And Ms. Sherry Zeeb is our Director of Federal Programs, and she's been our Director of Federal Programs for 6 years, and she does an outstanding job in that position. We've remained in compliance throughout her tenure, and we've passed our audits with exemplary ratings. And so I really want to thank Ms. Zeeb for all her hard work. And her team supports all of that hard work. Prior to Ms. Zeeb joining Phoenix #1, she actually worked at ADE, and that has been quite a benefit to us. Working with federal programs is like working with taxes. There's a lot of rules and there's intricacies and it can be interpreted differently. And so anytime Ms. Zeeb has a question, she's able to contact ADE right away because of those relationships that she had built prior to coming to Phoenix #1. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Zeeb and her team to present the work that they do.
Thank you, Dr. McLaughlin. I appreciate that. Thank you, President Diaz, Dr. Weeks, board members, and community. We are excited to share with you some information about federal programs today. We have a really short presentation for you, and then we will open it up for questions. Next slide, please. So, federal programs vision. It's our vision to improve the academic achievement for high needs students, and to provide all children the opportunity to receive an equitable and high quality education and to close educational achievement gaps. It is also our vision to utilize our expertise in compliance and allowability to guide fiscally responsible decision making. Next slide, thank you. My name is Sherry Zeeb. I'm the Director of Federal Programs, and I'm joined by my wonderful staff, Coordinator of Special Populations, Sarah Sims, and Coordinator of Federal Programs, Nadine Gafonia. And we also have one more staff member who isn't here today, but Federal Programs Budget Specialist, Yvette Puente. Next slide. Thank you. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our funding sources and how we manage them. So I'll start off with Title I. Title I, we receive about $6.3 million this year. 62% of that goes directly to schools. 38% the district uses to target areas of need and support schools with district initiatives. So a slide that we have later in this presentation will explain that a little bit further. But schools use their Title I funds to hire supplemental staff such as IAs, math, EL, reading interventionists. They use it for PD, extended day tutoring, and supplies for their buildings. Title II, we have about $400,000 this year in Title II funds. Title II supports professional development to ensure we have effective teachers and leaders. We bring in such trainings as equity trainings, new teacher trainings, and we pay for a portion of our coordinator of student success's salary. And we do a lot more with Title II funds. Title III funds, we have approximately $375,000. Title III is for English language acquisition. So with these funds, we pay our language acquisition specialist, our English classes for our families, We pay for PD for teachers, Rosetta Stone for students, and also purchase supplemental instructional supplies for our students, our EL students. Title IV, we have about $760,000. And these funds are used to provide a portion of the coordinator of student success's salary, the technology coordinator's salary, the technology specialist salary. We also use these funds for PD and to provide well-rounded educational opportunities such as STEM, drama, art, and more. Next slide, please. Okay, Title VI, Indian education. We have about $21,000 in Title VI funds, and we use the Title VI funds to support our special population coordinator's salary portion of it, and a portion of our special population student support IA's salary, along with purchasing materials for students. All of those expenditures are approved by the voting members of the Indian Education Parent Advisory Committee. So they make sure that, you know, the expenditures are what they really want. Johnson O'Malley is another fund. We receive about $60,000 in Johnson O'Malley funds, and it's an Indian education fund that are used to pay part of the special population student support IA's salary. We also use these funds for summer school, summer enrichment for our Indian education students, and to purchase culturally appropriate materials. McKinney-Vento, Part B, we receive approximately $66,000 this year. This is the Education of Homeless Children and Youth Grant. Our MV funds are used to provide funds for bus passes, transportation, personal hygiene products, school supplies, backpacks, and more for students. We also have the Targeted Support and Improvement Grant, the TSI. We receive approximately $140,000 for this grant. These funds are used to provide support for our K-3 reading intervention. We purchase 95% group materials, reading intervention materials, provide coaching support for our schools and PD, and provide extra hours for teachers. We pay teachers to extend the planning so that they can make sure their intervention is individualized and targeted. Comprehensive Support and Improvement Grant. We actually don't receive this grant this year. We received it last year. These are carryover funds of $7,000. So Garfield was identified as a comprehensive school in improvement last year, but their students showed so much gain that they were exited from this program. So ADE was kind enough to let us go ahead and use these funds this year. And Ms. Bernal already has a plan to use these funds to provide supplemental tutoring before and after school and during spring breaks for her EL and her students with disabilities subgroups. So we were lucky to get that. Early literacy funds, this is a state grant. We have 5 schools receiving these funds. We have $142,000. And these funds are specifically for K-3 reading and to really get our students reading at proficiency before the end of the year, before the end of 3rd grade. We use these funds to purchase materials, pay staff to support student reading, and provide PD. Next slide, please. So these are new funds for us. CARES ESSER 1, we received $4.4 million this year, and this was in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. These funds can be used in coordination with district funds. We purchased this year safety items such as PPE, plexiglass, filters, food, nutrition expenses. We provided PD to help teachers provide effective virtual learning for students. We paid teacher hourly to come in the summer to attend trainings, and we provided technology hotspots and laptops for students. ESSER 2, this is a new fund for us. It is about to open, this grant is about to open up the middle of February. We have an estimated $16 million coming our way, and that is based on a formula that was given to us by ADE. These items can be spent in the same way as ESSER 1 funds were, but should focus on increasing learning opportunities for students. We have not yet received these funds. We are in the planning stages. Schools right now are working on their comprehensive needs assessment and identifying where they need to, they're identifying their needs and where they'd like to focus their money and their spending. And in addition to that, we have a collaborative and purposeful process with the CNI team and the operations team brainstorming ideas, and they're going to be taking these to stakeholder committees throughout the district to get some ideas on how this $16 million should be spent. And really it will be, this money will be focused on meeting the needs of our students and based on data. CARES 1, Gear 1, CARES Gear 1, Acceleration Academies. So we had 4 schools receive funds here. We have about $550,000. And this money is to be focused on increasing student achievement, and suggested items for expenditures are PD, providing interventionists to support struggling students, purchasing supplemental materials, and more. So we had a question about what is the planning for this funding. Again, we're in a time of comprehensive needs assessment. Our schools are working hard to identify their areas of need. They're looking at their data and they're analyzing. And once they identify their needs, then they'll be able to appropriately write a plan with strategies and action steps to use this fund. So we're not there yet. This grant just opened up, so we'll be writing this grant within the next month, and they should be getting it soon. Out of this fund, Garfield did receive a large amount of money, but it's important to note that they received money based on 5 criteria: free and reduced lunch applications, not proficient students in ELA and math, unemployment claims in corresponding zip codes, COVID cases in corresponding zip codes, and lack of access to internet in corresponding zip codes. So the state looked at all the schools across the state, all the schools, they looked at the data, and Garfield was one of only 10 schools that demonstrated that their community was more significantly impacted by the global pandemic than other communities, and they tend to be historically under-resourced. So that is one of the reasons why Garfield receives so much more than the other 3 schools that were identified. When we allocate federal funds, we cannot take into account that Garfield is going to be receiving this large sum of money. Federal funds are supplemental. So what we do with our federal funds, especially our Title I, is we look at the free and reduced lunch count, and Garfield, it's important that Garfield gets their equitable share based on their free and reduced lunch count. So this truly is an example of equity in action, and schools with the highest need receiving the most money. Other funds coming our way. I've heard that Gear 2 funding is coming our way. It hasn't been determined at this time. We will keep you posted what we hear. But we should be hearing something too soon about Gear 2. All of our grants total about $29 million, but I want to make it clear this is only the federally managed funding. So this is Title I, all of the title grants and the CARES grants that we managed. There was an ESSER fund that was managed through business services, so it isn't reflected in this on this sheet, but that we did receive some of those funds too. And next slide, please. So this is an important slide. What you see here is a template that is within the Title I grant that illustrates how funds are distributed equitably to the schools. So in column A, you see our schools are listed, and they are listed in order of their free and reduced lunch percentages, which you can see those free and reduced lunch percentages in column B. In column C is the number of students they have at each site. So to determine how much funding a school receives, we take the suggested per pupil amount, which is up there in the right-hand corner by the little picture, $826.45. So ADE allows us to give our higher poverty schools a larger per pupil amount to increase the equitable distribution of funds. So column E shows you that our higher poverty schools receive a larger per pupil amount, and the per pupil amount is multiplied by the number of students at the school, and that equals the allocation they receive. So you will notice that 3.9 million of the 6.3 million went directly to schools. Title I requires, it's important to note, the Title I requires an evaluation of programs, so evaluation of the spending at the schools. So schools look at their data quarterly, they analyze their data, and they think about how they're spending their money. Are they spending it in the best way? Do they need to change direction and spend their money in another way? So it's a continual process, but they do work on evaluating how they are spending their funds. Next slide, please. This slide shows the breakdown of how the district Title I funds are used. So 38% are set aside for district to allocate. These funds really are used to support the district schools. Only 7% is used to support federal program staff, our supplies, and PD. Indirect cost is something that the district usually gets a percentage of all federal grant monies, and that ADE just basically looks at that every year. It fluctuates. This year we ended up with 0% indirect cost at the district level, but for next year we already have been approved for 12% of federal costs. So that helps the district with expenses in business services like payroll and processing purchase orders and things like that. So indirect cost is an important piece of what we do. Summer school, 7% of what we use at the district level goes to teachers and instructional assistants for the Move On and Reading summer school, which we're required to make sure that our students are reading at grade level by the end of 3rd grade. So that's critical. We also spend 34% of our district set-asides for preschool, and that's for teachers, IAs, materials, and PD, and that averages around $1 million every year. 33% of the set-aside monies go for instructional other, and that's used for things like we provide a 0.5 reading interventionist at our 12 Title I school sites, which is important to address our K-3 reading. We also pay for half of the language acquisition coordinator salary and half of the assessment coordinator salary because they do a lot of supplemental support for our students. We buy basic supplies for the schools and also buy supplemental instructional materials like 95% reading materials. Our CSI, TSI, and D schools, we also look at their needs, and if they don't have enough money to provide something, we look at how we can help. So we've provided an EL interventionist at a site. We have provided an IA when needed, and we provide PD to support them. Our homeless expenditure is 1% this year, but we are required to spend at least 0.5%. We use that to pay our staff, portions of our staff salary, for MV, student transportation, instructional materials, personal items for students, and things like that. Family engagement, we are required to set aside 1% for family engagement. And we work in partnership with ASU, and we provide American Dream Academy, although that's been hard during the pandemic, but that's been an effective program for parents. It's an educational classes that help parents learn how to help their kids with their education. The last thing we set aside monies on are PD, and we use that for coaching support for schools and registering schools for PDs that come up at ADE or K-12 center and things like that. So that's just reflected in our total Title I funds of $6.3 million. Next slide, and I will turn it over to Nadine.
Good evening, President Diaz, Dr. Weeks, board members, and community members. My name is Nadine Gafonia. I am the coordinator of federal programs. I've been an administrator in Phoenix Elementary for the last 15 years, currently making my contribution in federal programs, part of that team. Sherry referred to the Comprehensive Needs Assessment, often called the CNA, and it is completed annually by each one of the schools based on the ESSA and ADE requirements. Every school, they establish a team and they complete the CNA together to set priorities and take action towards their school improvement. So the teams, they review multiple sources of data. And I know one of the board members had asked a question about how schools are looking at rates of improvement in terms of effectiveness. And I know that everybody looks at their Ames Web Plus data, and those rates of improvement are included in that data, which is just one of the many pieces that they look at to help them determine the effectiveness of their prior year's plan. It guides them in setting new priorities, and it drives the development of their integrated action plan for the upcoming school year. And Sherry talked a lot about that because it is very intense that they are spending a lot of time over the next couple of months doing that reflective work. And of course, their desired outcome when they're reached, which is always a celebration, is a positive impact on student achievement. So also at the district level, we review the school CNAs and their trends, and we develop a district integrated action plan. This allows for the kinds of supports that Sherry mentioned throughout her presentation piece. Next slide, Troy. Here is an example of a one-page summary of a school integrated action plan. It's often referred to as the SIAP, and this one is HERDS. And it's highlighting their 3 priority principles. So when they do their needs assessment, they look at 6 different principles, and they identify those top priorities. They write need statements, desired outcomes, and strategies. So once the plan's developed, that's when the school actually allocates their fiscal resources to support their improvement. And one of the things, they're very thoughtful when planning to consider their subgroups of students to ensure there's equitable access. Sherry talked a lot about subgroups as well. And every strategy includes an action step for monitoring and evaluating effectiveness. So that is required. School teams meet continuously. Their leadership teams meet at the school. They monitor and adjust support at the school level based on the effectiveness they see with student growth. And our department is also responsible for monitoring the alignment of the school plans with their identified needs and the allocation of their resources. Next slide, Troy.
Thank you, Nadine. I'm going to take it from here for a little bit. That was a lot of numbers and a lot of departments and a lot of grant names. So we thought the best way to kind of drive this all home is to give you some pictures of some smiling real faces that receive these funds and these goods and these trainings. So you can see here, these are just some pics that we've snapped while we were doing our thing in federal programs. PD, we've bought a lot of PPE. Schools are prepared. That came out of ESSER. We manage those funds. You can see my pride and joy, the IPAC meeting, which we're missing right now since we're not doing in the pandemic. Reading interventionists, we also have math coaches and other coaches, but federal programs uses a thoughtful process for determining spending. It's our responsibility to ensure compliance, monitor and evaluate expenditures, and make sure there's effective implementation. So we just have one more slide of pictures for you. Again, the PPE, Nearpod is one of the technology resources that was purchased through federal programs this year to assist teachers and students. You'll see some empathy discussion cards. We've been very thoughtful with our Title IV expenditures. Those went to social workers. And again, my pride and joy, the JOM Title VI group up in the upper left. So if you would, Troy. My name is Sarah Sims. I'm the Special Populations Coordinator at Phoenix One. I've had the honor of working in federal programs since 2012. Prior to that, I was the school social worker at Bethune. And my largest student population group is McKinney-Vento students. We currently have 108 students who are identified as homeless in our district. That number is significantly down from last year. I believe that's reflective of the pandemic. And I think when the eviction moratorium is up the end of March, we will see significant increases. But right now we're at 108. My job as the liaison of record with ADE is to make sure that barriers to enrollment and success in school, barriers are removed and children are enrolled. And so you can see at the bottom of the slide, I know you're all able to read these, some services and supports that are provided. And I'm happy to go into those in further detail if you have questions. The next population is Indian education, and we do receive 2 federal grant sources, Title VI and Johnson O'Malley. Title VI right now we have 81 enrolled students, and Johnson O'Malley we have 57. And there are different guidelines for enrollment, and that is a parent permission on both of those groups. So parents do sign their children up as part of those programs. The IPAC meets monthly. The focus of that group is to provide an equity lens and to guide all expenditures in these 2 funding sources. So some of the supports that are provided are at the bottom of the slide. And our signature event, which Sherry mentioned earlier, is usually summer enrichment programming that runs parallel with summer school. So we're hoping that that might be able to take place this summer. Next slide, Troy.
Okay, and TSI, a lot of times referred to, stands for Targeted Support and Improvement. And TSI schools are determined based on subgroups of students performing in the bottom 5% of Title I schools in Arizona. This is calculated using the combined ELA and math scores from Arizona Merit, of course, soon to be AZM2. So of the 12 Title I schools in our district, 11 are targeted support and improvement schools. 10 schools have students with disabilities as their identified subgroup, and 1 school has English learners as their identified subgroup. And once that was determined at the district level, data from those identified subgroups was analyzed, and a common trend for a need to support K-3 reading was found. So addition to just the district recognizing at the district level that there was the need for K-3 reading, each school also includes strategies and action steps in their school plans to make sure they're meeting the needs of those subgroups. Fortunately, we were awarded the Tsi Competitive Grant, which allows for additional funding to meet the needs of these students in the area of K-3 reading. Next slide. And 95% Group, it's a professional development company that offers diagnostic assessments, explicit instructional materials, professional development, and coaching. And our department, with the help of Nicole Dillon, supports the implementation of this program at the schools. So what we do is we coordinate and attend the school 95% group consultation visits. We assist in the purchase of materials. We monitor and evaluate the implementation and effectiveness of the program. So this is our 2nd year of this TSI grant, which began last year with 3 schools, grew to 6 schools mid-year, and now includes all 12 schools. The reading interventionists are key in supporting this walk to read model and also ensuring that the K-3 move on when reading requirements are met. Additionally, Nicole Dillon and I facilitate the district collaborative team meetings with the reading interventionists so we can ensure ongoing support for them as well. And the TSI grant and Title I funds support this 95% group K-3 reading implementation.
Okay, so to wind it up, everything we do in federal programs really aligns with the 2025 strategic plan goal. We will ensure that we systematically address sustainable, equitable access and success for every student. If you have any questions, we're here to help.
Thank you so much for your presentation. This is very informative. Are there any questions or points of discussions from the board?
This is Dr. Vink. I just wanted to thank the team for the presentation and including the responses to some of the board questions that we sent earlier in your presentation. My only question is, when would we expect to see the district integrated action plan?
So what we do is we take, the schools are going through a process called comprehensive needs assessment, and they identify their needs. So we look for trends and patterns across the district, and we identify the needs we're seeing that really stand out. And we use that to drive the district integrated action plan. So we are a little bit delayed. The school does it first, and then we reflect on what they found, and we really take that into consideration and look for patterns and trends. So it will be it will be done before May, but it will be soon.
Thank you. And then just so that I'm sure that I understand, Shaw does not receive Title I funds?
Right. Shaw does not receive Title I funds. They are not a Title I school.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any additional questions?
Sherry,
Yes.
I just want to thank you, Sarah, Nadine, Denise. I want to thank everybody for pitching in. This was an outstanding presentation. Just a couple of questions. Sherry, when's the grant deadline for this ESSER 2?
There's no deadline for ESSER 2, so the grant isn't even out yet. It isn't even open. So it depends on how long a school district takes to write the plan. But we have a plan for finding out what our needs are, identifying them, writing an action plan, and then submitting the grant. So we're looking at a short timeline, trying to get this written by April 1st, and then, goes through the approval process. And as soon as it's approved at ADE, then we can spend the money. So you're looking at somewhere in May or June, probably, that we would receive the funds.
Okay. And then when do the grants end?
So the ESSER 2 fund, the one we have not received yet, it runs through September of 2023. The ESSER 1 grant that we currently have runs through September 30th of 2022. So a year sooner.
Okay. So they don't last forever.
No, they don't last forever, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Sherry.
You're welcome.
Sherry, I have a question about the use of the ESSER funds. I know you mentioned that there is a plan in place to figure out how to spend them, and that there's different categories. Is are each of, because it's a one-time fund, are, I guess this might be more of a Dr. Weeks question. I'm not sure who this question goes to. I'm wondering if some of the funds can be used in or towards our projects to increase enrollment. So for instance, if we have a signature school that really wanted to use a portion of these funds to enhance their current offerings, could they use that?
So would you like me to answer that, Dr. McLaughlin? Okay. So yes, they could use these funds. The ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funds are different from regular federal funds. So the title funds all are supplemental, which means you can't use them for things you've used in the past. So these are non supplanting funds. So that means you can use them for things that you've used M&O to pay for before. There's no restrictions really. You can use them widely as long as you can link them back to COVID-19 having an effect on whatever it is you're purchasing. So if it's something, if you think that enrollment has gone down and you want to use some funds to increase enrollment at these signature schools, if enrollment has gone down due to COVID-19 and we could you know, rely on that, then yes, you could spend them on that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is Reggie Carrillo. No question, but just a comment. And so thank you for, just as Dr. Vink stated, implementing all the questions that we had asked previously into the presentation, especially with the funding of Garfield and communities that have been historically impacted, and explaining that equitable formula funding process. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any additional questions?
You know, Dr. Diaz, I do. Sherry, so these resources can be used to increase our summer school
Yes.
to, let's say, all students,
Yes.
and perhaps extend the school year
Absolutely.
for a short time, right?
Right. So I might just note that the biggest focus for these funds is supposed to be on increasing learning opportunities for our kids. So yes, those would be perfect things to spend these monies on.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, Sherry.
You're welcome.
And so those learning opportunities, you had mentioned the committees. The committees are one way where we can hear. So are they one way? This is a question. So are they one way through the committees that we understand what opportunities there are to address student learning outcomes? Does that make sense? I'm still like.
Yes, Mr. Carrillo, that makes sense. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but yes, when we get to the committee level, we will make sure that they understand all of the possibilities. This is our opportunity to be very innovative in how we support our students' success.
Thank you, Dr. McLaughlin.
Mhm.
Are there any additional questions or comments? Thank you so much for your presentation and taking time out of your night to inform us of this. I did not know that there were so many different categories, so this was helpful to go through that presentation. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to item F.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, and good evening, governing board members and district colleagues and community that are listening to us. Wanted to provide the board an update regarding Pathways to Success and the things we're working on and continue to work on as we proceed with this initiative. So I'm going to pull up a presentation if you give me a second here. So I wanted to, in some ways, kind of repeat the initiative that we have going on regarding Pathways to Success. And those are around enrollment, civilization, retention, fiscal sustainability, right sizing for optimal and equitable instruction, as well as reimagining K through 8 grade education. And I wanted to also, as I proceed with my presentation, wanted to have a more specific discussion regarding enrollment stabilization, as well as right sizing for optimal and equitable instruction. And so I'll kind of go through that a bit more. But right now, that's we're working on all these areas, pretty much at the same time. However, with with the focus right now on enrollment stabilization, we're paying closer attention to enrollment and retention, and also we want to have a discussion regarding right sizing for optimal equitable instruction, and also realizing the word optimal is obviously somewhat subjective, and so one of the things we want to do is be able to really kind of identify what that means when it comes to being optimal and providing equitable instruction to our students. Wanted to also give you an update as to some things that have happened basically since the last update. And one is that we've been working hard on making and developing partnerships with some folks in firms and external individuals and firms that can help us with these initiatives. And we're done by way of talking to architect firms, development companies, and other individuals that basically have helped develop these master planning programs for other districts as well. And one thing is that that we're asking, for example, an architect company to do is to do a capacity study for an assessment for our facilities, so that we have a formal study of what we have capacity wise and basically our infrastructure. And also we're talking to potential connectors and facilitators for the community. And what I mean by that is we want to talk to individuals and firms that can help us figure out the best way for us to talk to the community, get their feedback, share with them our ideas of what we want to do as far as reimagining our school district and K-8 education within our school system, for the future. So we want to obviously connect with the right individuals that can make that strong connection and provide the best feedback that we can get from the community. That's something that we want to use throughout the process that we feel is very important, that we hear back and talk to the community, get their feedback, and share ideas. And also we've worked with a demographer, but we're also we had a demographic study that we shared with you with the board, but also we want to update the information regarding the new census information that is not currently available yet, but will hopefully be soon. And so we want to be able to get updated information from a demographer to be able to pinpoint more specific information to families within our school district, even within a different school boundaries, if you will. And so that's something that we think will help us with trying to reach more of our community and also deal with help us deal with the capture rate that we have right now within our school boundaries. And also we want to talk to educational experts and obviously folks that know a lot about education and can also help us assess different models that we can either put in place either now or for the future, and find ways that we can improve our instructional learning that we're providing to our students. And so we want to be able to hear from and get feedback from these experts as we move forward with this initiative. And just a couple of things that are kind of underway. We had our 100th day last week, and so right now we're looking at capturing information related to enrollment on the 100th day, but also capturing the average daily membership, the ADM. which is more important when it comes to the actual funding that we get from for each of our students and up to the 100th day. So that's something I will provide more information on at a future meeting, and what those numbers are as far as enrollment and ADM, and explain the difference between the two, and so that we all have the same understanding. And then, as I mentioned before, we're pursuing using the performance-based budgeting model to help us deal with the fiscal sustainability piece of these initiatives. That again, it's not the only tool that we can use, but it's one of the tools we can use to help us, to be sustainable and be efficient with our dollars. So that's something that we're working on now as well. And also just working on expanding our task force membership. And even if it's not membership, in the task force itself, it could also mean that we can touch base with individuals in the community or experts that can provide us feedback or present to the committee with information. So that's something that we continue working on an ongoing basis. So again, I wanted to talk about a couple areas more specific that as far as initiatives go. One being the enrollment stabilization and retention. And because we feel it's important that with having COVID and having a lot of distance learning, a lot of instruction, and again, we're very concerned that we might have a higher rate of decline next year if we don't do anything. So we want to be able to be proactive and be able to market basically develop a plan to how do we market to our communities to at the very least stabilize and keep the same membership for next year, but ideally even increase the membership and enrollment for the next fiscal year. And so the different things that we're thinking about related to this that we want to develop and working with different staff members, and obviously we have Linda Jeffries, our communication and marketing director, also helping us with the marketing efforts. But also the marketing efforts, it's not just about flyers and social media. There's a lot of things involved in that process that we want to develop kind of a full-blown marketing plan for each of our schools, and that we can basically put together now. We're not we don't want to wait till school ends, or we don't want to wait till the summer. It's something that we feel that just like we're doing with kindergarten services for next year, we want to start marketing those programs now, so that we can carry that out through the summer and hopefully get a higher enrollment next school year. And also we're working on assessing our retention strategy and ways to develop and to improve retention. Obviously there's a big focus on just declining enrollment, but also we want to understand how do we retain our current students. We need to figure out what when they leave, why do they leave? What is it that if there's something we can do to prevent them or from leaving, or maybe maybe there's something that we're not doing right. We want to look at those things and be able to address them in the long run, to be able to retain all of our students throughout their K-8 education. And so that's something that we're focusing on now. And as far as the entire initiative is that it's a long list of things that we're working on, but again, right now the priority is really to develop this marketing plan and work on the retention piece that we begin developing. And also, I wanted to obviously make this hopefully a conversational piece, because I also want to get your feedback from the board on any of these items. And so if you have any questions, please just feel free to interrupt, and I'll go ahead and answer the questions. And which brings me back to I forgot to mention earlier, back to working with external. I call them community connectors or facilitators, for lack of a better word. But if you have individuals or firms that you would like for us to talk to about them potentially doing this, we'd be glad to talk to them and see if there's something that's they can work with us on. And then I'm going to go into the initiative on right sizing for optimal equitable instruction. There's several things on here that we're looking at, and we're also I do want to focus right now on a couple of things that I want to point out is how do we develop an optimal and equitable the number of teachers that we should have per class. And same thing with the number. What is a category and criteria that we want to use to determine whether we need to right size the school or not, or resize the district. And so that's something that we have some ideas, but obviously we want to first of all get your feedback as well on that. But also I want to emphasize that the things we want to do, we want to make sure that we have assessment and feedback from professionals, especially in the education field, of what those things should be. So let me kind of just go back a little bit of an example of what I'm referring to. And so if we look at a few different criteria, right, that we'd like to get some feedback on from experts, but also just from a number standpoint, that if we look at the criteria of the average sections per grade level, right now we're sitting at just under 2, which means that we have an average of 2 sections per grade level. And the one thing though that kind of varies here is that sometimes we might have one class per grade in one school, another school may have 2, another one may have 3, and so that's kind of the challenge, is that how do we what is the right amount that for the best instructional level that we can provide our students of what that should be. And so again, I'm going to kind of throw some examples on here, but I wanted to focus on our current levels. And the average sections per school, with having 2, basically 2 teachers here in 2 sections per, we have 18 sections per school, and that's based on an average size of our classes of 23. And also the number is going to vary a little bit between the younger classes, let's say from K through 5th versus 6th grade to 8th grade. We typically have a higher number of students in the upper classes. But the average overall, it's at 23. That's something that's been board approved, and so that's the numbers we're trying to hit. And so based on these numbers, our current capacity at the schools that we have, based on the number of classes that we have available for use, we are using basically 54% of those classes throughout our system. So obviously we have a 46% gap or excess capacity that we're working with now. And so that brings us to an average number of students per school. Right now it's right around 430. And that once we look at the 100-day numbers and the ADM, we'll update this information with that. But right now it's based on the 40th day numbers. And so we were just doing a comparison here about some other potential opportunities here. And this is just sample illustrations. These are by no means things that we feel that are the right numbers, but just some things for us to discuss. For example, if we were to say that the proper number of sections per grade should be 3, based obviously on the right information that we have, that means that we would have 27 sections per school, and basically a similar class size. But that would mean that we will need 621 students per school. And again, the average now is 430. But we do have, I mentioned before, that we have some that are under 300 and some that are over 500. But the average is 430. And so the question would be is that what is the right number that we can provide the optimal and the best instruction to our kids, and still obviously be able to be financially efficient with those numbers. And so when I mentioned criteria and the things that we want to be able to look at and assess and get some expert advice on, and I put it down here in bold letters that we want to be able to get the expert analysis and recommendations on these, what those proper levels are. But ultimately, we want to be able to first of all determine what the criteria should be that we should look at. And so that we can get the expert analysis and feedback on that information, but also present it back to the board to get your feedback as well. And at some point, I would see where we would need some kind of direction or some kind of guidance of what those numbers should be, so that we can proceed with direction or recommendations. So, any questions on this part of the presentation?
Mr. Quintana, this is Dr. Vink. I do have a quick question. How come the school capacity percentages only include the general education? Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, I'm glad you point that out, because right now we're trying to just put on here basically the more basic information, so we're not taking into account, for example, music classes and those kind of things, PE and so forth. But that's something that we would also probably want to include, in kind of the overall analysis. So right now it's just an indication of kind of the easier things to track and measure. But as we proceed with this and we come up with the criteria, those are the kind of things we probably want to add to this list and show those numbers.
Thank you.
And Mr. Quintana, this is Mr. Carrillo. And so thank you for this presentation. And then what I'm thinking about, and for the next time this is presented, is having that list. So thank you for putting that out there, that we do need to partner with those community facilitators, that we do need architects, that those opportunities are available to be put forth with stakeholders, possible stakeholders. So thank you. And so for next time that this is presented, or whenever, however long you need, but having a list of partners ready and sharing that with us, partners that we are ready to work with. And then also, and I'm referring to the reimagining process, right? Having a timeline of the reimagining process when the groundwork is really going to begin. I know that the communities have done a lot of work, a lot of discussion, and so now I'm ready to hear about what actions will be taken to hold those community forums, to involve the community, those at the margins in the districts. And then I'm also thinking about the presentation having more logistical aspects in that terms. And another thing, and this is all from work that I've done with Reimagine Phoenix with the light rail process, and then having a philosophy for what it means to reimagine education. And so that can really ground us in the work that we're doing. And then with that, another suggestion is having an organizational chart or a chain of command, really, for how the process is going to work out in terms of you being the lead or whoever's leading this, and then who our facilitators are, right? Those who you decide to work with. And then which committees are going to be addressing which issues, if they're going to be divided or integrated. And then a timeline again. And then the thing I'm looking for to us is just a timeline, because we know this is very important work, and we know, however, we know that this is work, this is urgent work that needs to be done. So I would like a timeline for when we are going to, when certain things are going to get done, and when the reality is, we're going to start seeing the reality of that reimagining. Thank you.
Sure. No. Yes. No, I agree with that's Mr. Carrillo. So definitely, as far as the vendors and connectors and so forth, that's something that we do want to bring to you. And we did have for example, an architect that presented and just basically met with us on the task force. So that's something I would like to do is to have those type of potential partners also meet with the task force. And then also we can present the information to the board as well. So I'll definitely include that in my future presentations. And I definitely understand, what you're saying about the urgency, and that's why I do want to emphasize that that we're not working at each of these initiatives, kind of one at a time. We're basically working all of them, at the same time. And so, so if we look at, for example, the reimagining K-8 education. We have already a list of things that we're working on, and also the timeframes. So one thing I plan to do that Dr. Weeks and I talked about is is put this maybe more in a calendar format so that maybe it's a little bit easier to, point things out. But these are things that we want to start looking now. For example, the talking to the community. We want to be, as in my opinion, I'd rather do those discussions with the community and community meetings, in person. And so, if as soon as we're able to meet with the community in person, that's something I like to proceed with. But in the meantime, though, we want to be able to engage a connector, but also more of a kind of what I call a master planner of how they can help us put this whole plan together. And it's something that I want to get someone with the right expertise that have done it before with other districts and even other states that can put this whole plan together for us. And obviously working with us. And so that's definitely the urgency is there, and we're looking at a lot of things that we want to put in place because some of the things that that we want to talk to the community about. Some of the ideas that we have about how we can have maybe different models with our school system that they may or may not like, that's where we want to get the feedback. But ultimately, we want it to be all about instruction and quality instruction for our kids and our students. With having obviously the equitable lens to it that we want to put, the equity lens we want to put to it as well. And really, that's kind of what drives, I think, any decision we make is that how can we provide the best instruction to our community and our students, and now in the long run.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, and again, with the work that we've done, that I've done with the light rail, I do have a list of people that have done this work before, so I'll send them your way. But again, thank you for bringing up the opportunity and let us know that it's available.
Yeah, please send that over to me, and then I'll be glad to talk to them. And it also includes, like I mentioned before, if there's also community individuals that any of you board members feel that could be a good member of our task force, we'd love to talk to them as well. To have them involved in the task force. Right now, we feel that the more the merrier, but also we do want to make sure we have community involvement and community feedback, all along the way. And so really that was kind of, again, the premise of the discussion today, and by way of updates. And so obviously, I'll give you an update as much as I can. And but we're moving along with a lot of these items on here, and we'll keep moving forward, and to make the best decisions, the best recommendation we can make. And again, with your feedback, we're going to definitely need that, and because ultimately, we also need your blessing as well to move on some of these items.
Mr. Quintana, I have a question out of curiosity. This is a lot of work because it's reimagining the district essentially. So you're leading this, but who is helping you? Are you doing this on your own?
Well, no. We have, like I mentioned, I mentioned before, we have a task force for one. That's that right now it's a membership of 20 individuals.
Yeah.
They're part of the task force, and then I'm also talking to individuals out there to, in some ways, to help me make connections to some folks that can probably do some of this work for us. Let's say, for example, demographics, or talking to architects. I'm bringing them in to talk to the task force, and they're providing feedback, on those discussions. So, but to your point, that's why I want to get that community connected. That's going to help us talk to the community, but also a master planner that's going to get us all kind of going in the right direction to put this all together. And so that's a help that I'm getting now.
Well, thank you for the work on this. It's quite an undertaking and a lot of moving parts. I think it would be very helpful, as you mentioned, to kind of see this in like a master calendar, maybe color coded, just so we can kind of get an idea of like what activities are taking place when, and that could help also guide our board agenda items, things like that.
Yes, yeah, definitely. That's something that it's right now. Again, I do have a timeline on here, but yeah, I think putting in a calendar setting will be a little more easier to understand how they all fit together.
Great.
So I'll do that.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any additional comments or questions?
I have questions. This is Jessica Bueno. So, Mr. Quintana, can you kind of just elaborate exactly what does the task force? Is there each task force for every initiative?
No, there's one task force that's helping me with the entire program, the Pathway to Success, the overall initiative. So there's one task force, but also we already have established subcommittees and committees of that just ongoing. They do their work on a regular basis. For example, we have a benefits committee that's working on some things regarding benefits. We have the 301 committee that helped us with dealing with the performance-based compensation initiative that we have in place, and so the task force itself is, but also I'm sorry, let me back up. For example, regarding enrollment and stabilization, so Linda established a committee that's basically a marketing committee. And so what we're asking for some of the task force members to be part of that committee. And then she's also going to be getting other staff members from across the district to make up that marketing committee. And so they are involved. And then also at the same time, we do have the performance-based budgeting committee that's coming up. And so there will be a few of the task force members that will be part of the performance-based budgeting committee as well. And so they'll be kind of stepping into some of the committees, but not everything here is broken down by committee. It's kind of more specific roles.
And is there a follow-up question? Is there a specific timeline for the task force committee? Like, do they have 1 year to work on a certain initiative? It just feels that, sometimes when people are part of task force, if there's like no end date and no end goal, you can just keep spinning wheels for, as long as that individual wants to stay participating. So I'm just curious if there are a certain like end date for the task force.
Yeah. So right now, if we look at the timeline of these initiatives, right? So enrollment and stabilization, or it basically started sometime in January, even in some cases before that. In some situations, it'll continue on through December of this year, and then others will be probably that would be maybe the latest. So I would envision maybe that committee, that marketing committee, staying together until then, but also on some of these other items down here that we have on the list here. Some of them will go through December, some through May, some through March. Most of them, looks like they all finish up at the end of the calendar year in December. And so I would imagine that the task force itself, at that point, that'll be kind of probably the end of that. And that's assuming that, if we can, by then we can come up with this whole reimagining plan, the right-sizing plan. And so I would say that that might be the latest time that we keep the committee together until December 2021. But in some cases earlier, depending if we get some of these things done earlier.
And then last question, I think this might be for Dr. Weeks, but are board members allowed to be on the task force?
And Ms. Bueno, I've unmuted and muted myself about 4 times. After hearing Mr. Carrillo's background at light rail, having been a light rail guy myself several years ago, I know how organized they can be and how they've been able to really interact with the community. As long as we don't have 3 board members on the committee, we don't have a quorum. This particular committee is not technically a subcommittee of the governing board. It's basically my committee, right? And Mr. Quintana is facilitating this work. So because of that, there's some allowances. So Ms. Bueno, Mr. Carrillo, if you are interested in being part of either, the main committee or a subcommittee, just reach out and let me know, and we'll work through the logistics of getting you to participate, because I hear that you can have positive influence in this area. So, and that's all part of that teamwork that we talked about last week. So
Yes,
I do
sign
appreciate
me
you
up.
volunteering. We accept
Yes.
your, Mr. Carrillo, what do you think?
Yeah, and I wasn't the only one on this board to work on that reimagining process. Jessica was a big asset too, so we definitely have a great leader here too.
If we have subcommittees, as long as we keep you guys separate, I think we'll be okay, right? And of course, if the little hairs stand up on the back of my neck, I'll call legal and just double check. So I appreciate that. I do have a teachable moment if anybody wants to hear it. Okay, so one of the things that you hear, Mr. Quintana, can I take it away for just a minute?
Yes, please.
One of the things that you hear that's confusing to just about everybody is, what's the difference between enrollment and average daily membership? You would think that the state pays a per pupil amount in state revenues to fund a public school based on enrollment, but that's not the case. The enrollment number is always going to be higher than the average daily membership number. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what is the 40th day? What is the 100th day? What is all of this day stuff? What is the 11th day, right? And so average daily membership, technically, by definition, I'm looking at it here, is calculated by dividing the aggregate days membership for all children on active rolls by the number of days the school district is in session. So if the school district is in session for 180 days, you're at the 40th day. And Troy, if you're back there, please feel free to jump in and help me with this. Then you would take a snapshot of the students who were on the rolls at that moment in time, and you would say that your average daily membership was at 55 or 5,600 students, but your enrollment might be at 58 or 5,900, because your enrollment number is always going to be bigger, because enrollment and withdrawals aren't necessarily calculated by the actual membership days of a school. So here's the way I explain it. If someone is a student on Monday and they withdraw from the district on Monday, and another student enrolls in the district on Thursday, how many membership days did you lose? How much ADM did you lose? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You lost 3 membership days, and that would explain your average daily membership. So when we build our budget, why is this important? Because when we build our budget, we build it on average membership days, ADM, and not enrollment. So, Troy, was that clear as mud, or was that a good teachable moment?
I could not have explained it better myself.
Wow, thank goodness for the internet. All right, thanks for putting up with me. You're going to hear a lot about ADM as board members in the district, and to have that cornerstone piece of information, I think is going to go a long way. And thank you, Mr. Quintana, for your presentation tonight. And you picked up a couple volunteers, so nice work.
Yes, thanks.
Are there any additional questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Quintana, for your presentation. We will go ahead and move on to item G.
Right, okay, so here we go. Item G1, Madam Chair, members of the governing board, is administration requests approval of policy BDA. This is the board and organizational meetings as a second read. And there's not a lot going on here. This has been vetted by legal. You can see the strike-throughs, and the purpose of this policy change is to move away from the quarterly vice presidents and into an annualized vice president. And so should the board approve the policy tonight, immediately following, I would ask the governing board to nominate and elect a vice president who would carry out the function of the vice president for the remainder of the calendar year. So this is kind of the first phase of a two-part process. Ms. Trujillo, I have not forgotten about you. A sergeant of arms, I think, might align itself well to the clerk of the board, and I'm investigating that. But for tonight, this is kind of where we are. So I'll open it up for discussion. Madam Chair, that's your job, not mine. I'll let you open it up for discussion regarding this second read for policy.
Thank you, Dr. Weeks. Are there any questions or sorry, so since we are requesting approval, can I have a motion to approve item G1?
This is Dr. Vink, so moved.
And can I have a second?
Jessica Bueno, second.
Are there any questions or comments?
Madam President, this is Carmen Trujillo. Can you guys hear me okay?
You're a little low. It's a little low.
I have some new earbuds in, so I'll just make it brief. I think it's a step in the right direction. So the responsibilities are more transparent. We can get more experience on the board, and I'm excited that we are choosing to move in this direction. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Trujillo. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Okay, with that, the motion passes, and we will go ahead and move on to item G1. Or sorry, H1.
Yep. So, Madam Chair, you're free to open the floor for nominations.
I've never done this before. So are there any nominations for vice president?
Yes, this is Jessica Bueno. I would like to nominate Ms. Trujillo for vice president.
Thank you. I was going to do the same thing.
Sorry.
Are there any other nominations? Well, Ms. Trujillo, if you do accept this nomination, you will be taking over a little bit sooner for the president in August. So Dr. Weeks, do we vote on it?
Yes, we have to vote on it.
Okay. Or
So we have, you've opened the floor for nominations. We have a nomination. Congratulations, Mr. Trujillo, for allowing yourself to be put on the hook for vice president. And if you accept the nomination, then you would call for a vote to elect the vice president.
Okay, Ms. Trujillo, do you accept this nomination?
I do, thank you.
Well, thank you for accepting. So all those in favor of electing Carmen Trujillo as our vice president, say aye.
Aye.
Dr. Diaz,
Aye.
did we have, I think we need to have somebody make the motion and second and then vote.
I forgot about that. Thank you, Ms. St. Clair.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion to approve Ms. Trujillo as the vice president?
This is
This
Reggie.
is Dr.
No, what?
This is Dr. Fink. So moved.
And do I have a second?
Reggie Carrillo, I second.
Is there any discussion?
Madam President, Carmen Trujillo again. I just wanted to thank Ms. Bueno for the nomination, and you guys, and you as well. I don't take it lightly, and I know it was a bit confusing at first, so I do appreciate it, Ms. Bueno.
Well, thank you, Ms. Trujillo. I look forward to having you serve as the Vice President. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Congratulations, Ms. Trujillo. You are our new Vice President.
Thank you all very
Congratulations,
much. I really
Carmen.
appreciate it.
Thank you for
Thank you.
serving.
My absolute pleasure.
All right, well, we will go ahead and move on to item H2.
Okay, so here we go. Tonight, we said we were going to talk about the future of the calendar. We have one more confirmed board date. So tonight is not a night that we have to vote on a calendar. But I wanted to open the dialogue up for our pattern of board meetings. So for example, we do basically the second and fourth Thursday every month. We had talked about going once per month, plus some work study sessions. We've kind of gone through this before. And so we have a little bit of a survey that we've conducted by calling different school districts. Some of the larger districts that we surveyed do a once per month board meeting. It is a very doable thing once it gets built into the culture. What I see happening with a once per month meeting is we would retain the whatever date we pick for a once per month meeting. We would still have a Friday release date for the board packet. You would still have Saturday, Sunday. We'd still follow the Monday pattern. Tuesday, Wednesday, then Thursday, we would have the meeting. I think some of the benefits to having a once per month meeting, it would give the administration more time to develop the packet and more time to communicate with the governing board, right? Because we just have more time. Having 2 board meetings per month feels sometimes a little rushed. And from the administrative perspective, the other thing that I think can be concerning is our history of having, long meetings. I don't know that a once per month meeting is going to extend our meeting time, shorten our meeting time, or keep it the same. I think that really depends on how we work collaboratively together as a board, and the information, the strategic information we want to make sure that our community understands clearly through transparent kind of thought process and discourse and discussion and whatnot. So tonight we're just kind of opening it up. I'm going to be quiet, and I just want to listen to you.
Thank you, Dr. Weeks. Are there any questions or comments or initial reactions?
This is Reggie Carrillo. My initial reactions, I agree with that, Dr. Weeks, and then my initial reactions for the 2 times a month is that me speaking personally for me is that since I am new to this board, this is my first year. While I lived in the Phoenix district for a while, there's still a lot for me to learn in terms of board procedures. And so my only my benefit, my positive that I would see in having 2 board meetings a month plus a work study session, if need be, is that I do feel like I need that pace right now to keep getting that information because we do have a lot to address. Again, I do agree with your sentiments though, Dr. Weeks.
Dr. Weeks, what is the commitment from the cabinet for, say, a study session versus a board meeting?
Well, we have to have board meetings. right?
No,
Because that's how
I mean, like, how much work does the cabinet have to put in for a study session versus a board meeting?
study sessions are typically targeted and focused, so the depth of knowledge is greater, requires greater research, more data pulls. You know, you're talking deeply about a specific topic. At a board meeting, we have lots of discussion, and we try to pull as much data as we can with the limited time availability that we have. But our board meetings are really should be targeted for general business, keeping the district moving forward. So, for example, you see that in our kind of our consent agenda, the things that have to be done by the governing board that really don't require a lot of time. So, what we've been up to lately, because of the pandemic and because of you know, trying to get community voice and staff voice for some of the discussions that we've had, it's been a lot of work. You know, I'm not gonna shield the board from the volume of work that administration and school sites and teachers and everybody's been putting in, so that we can provide information through the public governing board channel.
Right. So if we have one study session and one board meeting, is that the same amount of work for cabinet as it would be to have like 2 board meetings, or does that alleviate a little bit of pressure? You just mentioned that having the 2 board meetings sometimes felt a little rushed, and I was looking at maybe a study session and a board meeting option.
I think a study session and a board meeting option would be fine. To Mr. Carrillo's point, then we could begin to target those things that we discussed at the retreat, right? Part of our next steps, the things that we know we want to learn about. And then, of course, for new board members, we always like to support you with, you know, our content specialists in our different departments, so you get to know us. Also, it's advantageous to get to know our principals and our staff. And if we were on the ground, we'd hop in a car and we would go, you know, cruising around, meeting folks. And someday that will happen. To answer your question specifically, Dr. Vink, it would be depending on the topic, it would be more advantageous, I believe, to have the 1 board meeting a month and 1 work study session a month.
Thank you.
To that point, I think that there are a lot of sorry, just one second. To the points that have been made earlier, especially with having a new board, I think there's a greater need to have some in-depth study sessions on a lot of the topics that we've been discussing in our board agendas. We can't really, I mean, we could get into detail with those, but then we'd be here all night. So I would agree that it seems most advantageous to have a board meeting a month and a study session where we could really dive into the different topics. I mean, there's a lot of content there in the pathways to success that we could break up and really take a deep dive and just help bring some historical knowledge for the new board members. So that's my take on things. Would love to hear from other board members as well.
This is Carmen Trujillo, Madam President. I'm supportive of that only because I know I've experienced the depth that a work study session takes, and I do believe we have not so much more intimate conversations, but it's a little more I don't know, formal and informal at the same time as far as our ability to have back and forth questions. So I do think it's a great idea to, if we are going to make any adjustments, I think still meeting twice a month is beneficial, but I do think it would be even more beneficial for one of those sessions, for one of those meetings to be a work study session going forward until we are a more cohesive board and we can really set a tone for this next couple of years that we're working as a team.
Thank you, Ms. Trujillo. Ms. Bueno, do you have any questions or comments?
I'm open to what's been proposed. I'm willing to work around whatever the team needs. So whatever direction you want to lead us in.
So it sounds like there's a preference for having one board meeting a month where we cover a lot of topics, but perhaps not as in depth, and having one study session a month. I mean, we're not limited to one study session a month. If we, when we calendar things out, if we see we need more than one a month, we certainly can do that. But it sounds like the board is finding it to be advantageous to take that deeper dive at least once a month. Is there any anybody have any opposition to what I just said? All right, so Dr. Weeks, I know that we're at this point just receiving and discussing. So at our next board meeting, would we have a recommendation for approval in terms of one board meeting and then at least one study session a month, or is that something we'd vote on today?
No, we don't have it on the agenda to vote on today. Okay. So next steps as I see them, Dr. Diaz, is you and I working together to calendar the board meetings. We're going to want to work around some of our required dates. Like, for example, we have a June and July kind of required date. That might even require us to have an extra board meeting as we propose and adopt the budget. There's only about a 10-day window there for that kind of stuff. So let's discuss those kind of nuances, right, regarding this plan. And then we just received information from Iconico with regards to some of the things that we all said. So I'd like to spend some time going over what those work study sessions would be so we can preload them and pre-calendar them. So that would give us even more time to pull the information, knowing ahead of time exactly what we're going to be talking about with work studies. So if you're okay with that, Dr. Diaz, I'd like to work with you. I'd like our team to come together, and then I'd like to work with you on finishing it off.
Yep, that sounds good. And then we'll present that to the board so they can discuss and vote on it.
I think that's appropriate. And then, of course, we can have a few board updates, along the way, maybe a couple of emails so that you can kind of see what we're thinking. So you're not waiting until the board meeting to have all the information.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Are there any additional comments or reactions to those next steps?
Madam President, Carmen Trujillo here again. Thanks for asking. Dr. Weeks, can you tell us of a time that the board did have one meeting a month, and I guess what your experience was maybe?
I don't know that Phoenix Elementary has a history of one board meeting a month. They've moved from, different days, but in the time that I've been with the district, it's always been 2 board meetings a month. And I really never understood that, I'm trying to remember if we had 1 or 2 at Murphy, but at my time in Yuma Union, which is a district about twice the size of Phoenix L, and Yuma Elementary, which is also about twice the size of Phoenix L, they each had 1 board meeting a month. And at that time, my role was to serve both districts. So I reported to two boards, but I had 2 board meetings a month, but they were once per month for each district. And it worked out really, really well. They got a lot done in a reasonable amount of time. And I think the way they did that was having that communication with board members, having the relationships between board members and staff, and ways to provide information to the community along the way.
And
That's helpful.
oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Here. So I believe Phoenix Union, correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone knows this, but I'm pretty sure that Phoenix Union does the 1 board meeting a month and then they have study sessions, but I don't know if it's a mandatory once a month study session or if it's as needed. That could have changed, so I'm like 90% certain.
Madam President, I've got one more question for Dr. Weeks. Dr. Weeks, are there any limitations, or maybe trying to phrase my question as precise as possible, but as far as the work study session, say some decision was important, you know, in a couple of emergency situations we had over the last couple of years where maybe a phone call was needed or something. Are there any limitations on us that we couldn't discuss some certain things at the work study sessions and take a vote on anything? Or is that completely off limits? I only ask because I know they are made to the public and everybody can know that we are meeting and I guess attend our work study sessions as well.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. There's a couple of ways that we could structure these. Sometimes you have a work study session because you want to learn more about something. Sometimes you have a work study session because you want to learn more about something and then take action on what you just learned, right? And so we've had both types, Mr. Hugh, and you've been part of both types. So one of the things that we could do in a pinch is if we had like a pre-scheduled work study session and then we wanted to take immediate action after the work study session on something, then we just communicate to the community that we're going to adjust that particular work study session to layer a board meeting on top of that work study session subsequent to the work study session so that you can take the action. You can't take action on a work study session, but you can in a board meeting. So then, you know, and you've all seen this, right? You go into a work study session, you talk about your stuff, then you have to come out of the work study session, then you have to go into the board meeting, and then that's when you take the action. We've done that in the past. It's easy to do. And we're fairly nimble enough to be able to schedule that and get that out in front of the community if we had to. Let's say there was a COVID related thing that we wanted to get in front of the board for a decision.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the clarification.
Sure.
Are there any additional questions or comments?
Yeah, so the way I'm understanding is that we could have the 1 work study session, the 1 board meeting, layer it to where the work study session is where we're having that brainstorming discussion and then we're taking action on the board meeting, with the possibility of having emergency work study sessions too, if need be.
Yeah, I think we could be nimble. Now, we don't want to confuse the community, right? And we don't necessarily want to have board meetings after every work study session because there might not be anything to vote on. So I think if we first put a cornerstone in for when our board meetings are going to be, then the community can rely that the governing board is going to have board meetings, you know, on this day, you know, at this month. And then we would say, we're also going to have work study sessions on this day in this month. And then if we needed to take some kind of action somewhere in the middle, then we would inform the community that because of this reason, we're going to add another meeting. So I would say that part would be as needed.
Are there any additional questions or comments?
Madam President, Carmen here. Sorry, one last thing. Could I maybe ask that when this is presented to the board, that we maybe have like 2 different scenarios as opposed to one? I mean, if one is just, you know, after everything's looked at, and one is just more preferred, but I don't know. I feel like we are in favor of going to one board meeting a month, but I'm not too sure I guess I'm not too sold that that might be the complete way to go for the whole entire rest of the year. Because we don't know what things are looking like. So maybe just 2 different scenarios, I guess. Is that ridiculous?
Not at all. I think it's something that we've discussed, and Dr. Diaz, you and I can kind of sit down and take a look at, and then Carmen, I might want to just kind of get some more information about what you're thinking about in terms of multiple scenarios. If any board member has thoughts about multiple scenarios, you know, kind of send them over, and that way we can, you know, work the calendar, because this is all about calendaring, right? So how to work the calendar in a way that, and I do agree, this is a big change. And some of this we're just going to have to live through for a while to kind of feel it,
Right.
to see if, you know, if this is sustainable, if this is what we want to do for the long haul. Some, you know, when you have change, you just kind of, sometimes you just got to climb into it and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then, you know, we're free to make changes again. We just want to make sure that we don't, you know, that we keep our community kind of up to date, so we don't confuse them either.
Absolutely. That predictability is exactly where my mind is going with it. So I did make a note. So yes, I will send that over. Thank you very much, guys. Team.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments or questions?
Madam Chair, just very quickly, I did find the kind of the short survey that was conducted. This survey is a little dated, but Martha looked at Bald, Levine, Osborne, Wilson, Union, Tolleson, Fowler, Deer Valley, and Phoenix Union as single, you know, once per month districts. And she also asked, how long were your meetings? And meetings range anywhere from, wow, from 40 minutes to 2 hours for these different districts. I don't know how you get a 40-minute meeting, but okay.
Interesting. I wonder, yeah, that would be interesting to see or to understand how they do that. I wonder if their study sessions help with that a little bit.
I think so. I don't have study session info on here, but I imagine they've got to do something.
Yeah.
Right. Unless they have, you know, I don't know. We'd have to ask for more information on that. But this is what I have. I just wanted to share it out before I lose it again.
Thank you. Are there any other reactions or questions? All right, so we will go ahead and move on to item 3. Are there any board reports or requests?
Yeah, I would like a board. I just want to follow up on earlier comments, and it does go in line with a request that was made the last board meeting, to see to get an update on how we're meeting instructional minutes with asynchronous learning time, and to see from there, the calendar, if there has been any calendar changes that have been implemented, and if those align with the board, with what the board voted on for the Monday asynchronous schedule. So we can understand teacher and student, the teacher and student calendar schedule for that Monday.
This is Dr. Vink. I have a quick report. I was able to attend the Indian Education Parents meeting on Tuesday, and I was so impressed with the parents that are participating in this committee. They were looking at the budget, and as we all know, budgets are tricky and difficult, and I was thankful to be able to attend, and I appreciate their time and dedication, as well as the time and energy of the staff, Miss Sarah Sims and Miss Nadine Gafonia, who were there. Thank you.
Are there any additional board reports or requests?
This is Carmen Trujillo. Madam President, I've got a quick question for Dr. Weeks. Is there a, something on Outlook where there would be like a calendar we could access, that the board would have access to, kind of everybody could see, to know when these meetings are? I sometimes calendar them in my personal phone, and then I calendar them with my other phone. And I just wondered if there was some more, a broad, more generalized calendar that the board could have access to for these dates, until we get more organized as far as our calendar is going. I just wonder if there's something already in place that we might have access to.
Well, that's always the rub, right? And it's been the rub for as long as I can remember. At the end of the day, we've got the calendar on the website, but that, you know, when we come back next board meeting and we lock in those dates, then we'll plug those dates into the calendar that's on the district website. I think Troy sends out Zoom links to everyone, and hopefully that's hitting your Outlook calendar. And if you're not getting those, Mr. Heel, or any board member, then we need to figure out why that is. But those Zoom links and those calendar events should be hitting your phoenixschools.org calendar. We can create specifically within Outlook a board calendar, and then send all
That's
that stuff
kind of where I was going with it. I apologize. In my head, Gmail and Outlook are like two separate things, so I didn't even, yes, I do get my links and everything to my Outlook email, but as far as like a one go-to place that I am just kind of conditioned to go to is both my Gmail calendar and my Outlook calendar. So it'll note on there that we do have a board meeting, but you still have to go through your emails to find the link that was sent out for that week as a panel member, which is fine. I usually get that and I'll copy it and put it in my own calendar. But just for those type of things, like the meetings during the week, the Q&A, I know I see that we get invites to some of them, but just as far as like a general thing that is not always on the district calendar, it would be nice. So if that could be a request for later on, while we are making this move to get more organized and have a more colorful calendar, I think that would be one request of mine. Thank you.
You know, I think, Mr. Heel, that you and me and Troy should probably spend about 20. I know Troy has a fix for this. I don't, but he does. And so I think the three of us should probably spend maybe 20 minutes, and I'll bet he's got a solution for this. The other thing that you are going to want as board members are things like what's happening at the school site. What are the events that are at the school sites and what's going on in different places so that you can participate, you know, with the campuses and whatnot. It's a little clunky with COVID, but Mr. Hugh, if you have the time, I would say let's sit down with Troy and let's see if we can't maybe figure out a way to get these calendar events to hit both your calendars so you don't have to copy and paste.
Dr. Weeks, one thing I realized is we didn't explicitly discuss work study sessions on item H2. So I'd like for, I don't know if we can go back, or if for item H3, if board members wanted to specifically address any study sessions that they are hoping to have. I just don't want to miss that.
Well, we can't go back, but we can use, you know, board reports and requests. And then of course, you can always, board members can always email us their thoughts and ideas. And when you and I, Dr. Diaz, sit down and talk about this, we can incorporate some of that stuff too. So I think there's a couple of options for board members.
Okay, sounds good. So if there are any board members who do have specific study sessions they were hoping to bring up, feel free to do so right now. So I have a few, and I've mentioned them before, so I don't know if these are already written down somewhere, but I think we do need to have a study session on declining enrollment, and the different the different action items that are being done currently to mitigate that or to address that. The next study session I would like is one that examines our pre-K offerings, examines how we will ensure all of our students that are within that age range have access, understanding what the demand is, where our capacity is. And Dr. Weeks, thank you for getting me those answers on capacity. I think this would just be helpful for the board to have discussion on. And then the next one, I'm fine with it being a study session or an agenda item, but I would like to have a presentation from Shaw, and perhaps Ms. Jeffries can join because there is a marketing component. I would like the board to understand the makeup of the pre-K. So how many of those students are within our boundaries and how many of those are from out of district, specifically for pre-K. What are we currently doing to market this opportunity to our in-district families? And how are we informing them on why Montessori is a good option? Because I think just putting Montessori pre-K enrollment on a flyer is not enough. People need to understand why it's beneficial. So I would like that to happen before we start the enrollment process for pre-K for Shaw. And those are all that I have for now.
I do have one, and then as I think of them, I'll email them. But one on the return to school process, what our models are for returning back to school, and then we're requesting a study session that compares what other schools, neighboring school districts are also doing, what back to school dates they have set too. And if anyone else has any, have anything else to add to that, I will email it, but those are my raw thoughts right now.
Thank you. Are there any additional study session thoughts or board reports or requests?
This is Dr. Vink. In kind of line with what Mr. Creo requested, and then Dr. Diaz, you mentioned earlier regarding COVID and return to school, finding out what had been happening in the learning labs and how that had been going. I would like to see some sort of survey to the staff, hopefully to either parents or students or both who have been on campus regularly. I believe that we do have staff of some sort on all of our campuses right now, even if it's just food services, that looks at how the mitigation measures are being implemented right now. So I think that that would look like how often are you on campus? 1 day a week, 2 to 3 days a week, 3 to 5, and then how are people always wear, or like, do people wear masks? And then it says never, sometimes, always, something like that, to just find out how things are being managed, or what the people on our campuses are seeing.
Thank you. Are there any additional requests?
Madam President, this is Carmen Trujillo. I heard you mention the work study possibility of regarding enrollment, and I wondered if we could add to that marketing and communication, so the board has an opportunity to really share our vision as a board for what we are all also envisioning, because from listening to Mr. Quintana's presentation, it sounds like those two things go hand in hand. So I do think it would be beneficial to also tie in the marketing and communications vision into that if possible, not necessarily something separate.
So, Ms. Trujillo, just to clarify, are you looking at, for this, how does marketing and communication support our efforts in declining enrollment as separate from the marketing presentation that Ms. Jeffries will present to us on where her department is in terms of goals?
At this point, yes, since I wasn't too sure if and when that was going to happen, because I'm also concerned what role that has played in the declining enrollment. So should I maybe ask when our update will be, and then we could, then I'd probably have a better idea of what my request looks like after we have that update.
Yeah, I mean, I think based on the presentation that Ms. Jeffries is creating, it seems like it could make sense for it to be two separate things, just because her presentation is more along where she is in terms of goals and quantifying those, and where she is with the strategy overall. I think marketing does go hand in hand with declining enrollment, so it's kind of one and the same. So as they are creating that study session, I think it would be helpful, Dr. Weeks, to make sure that marketing plays a role in that.
This is Mr. Carrillo. And then another part that I think aligns with that, Mr. Carrillo, is especially with the reimagining process, marketing and communications for letting our community know about that, and seeing how that is a part of our marketing and communications plan too going forward.
Mr. Carrillo, you kind of cut off. So are you're wanting to see how the Reimagining Schools project is being integrated into our marketing plan?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So Dr. Weeks, I think I'd leave it up to you and Ms. Jeffries to figure out where that fits in, if it fits into the upcoming presentation that she'll be giving us, or if that's something that would go into the declining enrollment study session.
Yeah, let me think about that.
Okay.
Let me process that and think about how we make connections. We've got some connections already, Dr. Diaz, I think, where we can begin to bundle some of our work, our topics for work study sessions to make them more comprehensive.
Yeah.
So I'll float you some of my ideas on what we might do here.
Okay, sounds good. All right, are there any additional comments before we move on to future agenda items? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item H3. Or sorry, H4. Are there any future agenda items? Dr. Weeks, I know that this is something that you're working on, but do you have an update on when the principals will be presenting to us, those who have signature schools?
They're on deck to begin presentations at the next board meeting, along with Ms. Jeffries and Ms. Reynoso, with regards to the marketing piece. And I have a couple of principals that I'm considering that I might bring to the governing board who are not signatures yet, but with some support could be. So I need to filter them out, and I want to make sure that that when we do these presentations that they're timely and all the rest. So they're going to begin at the next board meeting. When they end, I'm not sure, right? Could be the board meeting after that, whatever. But yeah, they'll begin at the next board meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Are there any additional future agenda items? Okay, hearing none, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 8:42 p.m. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Bye, everybody.
Bye now. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye-bye.